Well, greetings, salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a companion video. What are companion videos? Well, I'm awfully glad that you asked. See, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. in the morning, we save time to take some live questions, but we don't always have time to get around to all the live questions that get sent in. But I want to make sure those questions get answered properly in a video, so I gather up those live questions, we bring them over here, and we address them in companion videos. And today is Tuesday, August the 6th, and these are the questions that we had left over from this morning's show. So let's not waste any time and dive right into getting caught up. And we're going to start getting caught up with Lone Wolf X6, who writes, when someone asks you about X actor in X role, just pretend you're on movie fights with said person asking you. Well, no, I mean, look, it doesn't bother me when somebody wants to ask me about X actor in X role. And that's why, I'll just very, matter of fact, and this is why I only get asked about 5% of the time that I used to get asked this question, because I'll respond by saying, I don't really have an opinion about X actor in X role, other than to say, is X a good actor? Is he or she a good actor? And if he or she is a good actor, then I'm fine with the idea of them getting just about whatever role, because the most important thing to me is that they get a person with talent, right? Now, yeah, there's fit and all that kind of stuff, and that's a smaller issue and secondary, but it's even hard to comment on fit of X actor in X role when we don't even know how X role will turn out, right? Like a lot of people, when Hugh Jackman was cast a Broadway song and dance man, terrible fit. He's 6'2", 6'3", whatever. Terrible fit, pretty boy with the big smile. That's not Wolverine, but we didn't see in our heads we didn't know what the script Wolverine was, or how that person would fit into it. So I don't generally ask myself questions of fit too often. I do once in a while, but I don't too often. And that's why, to me, the basic idea is, hey man, just get an actor who's got talent and I'm good to go. All right, Jacob Cameron writes, is the rumor that Tenet is a sequel to Inception true or false? I love the show. Let's put it this way. I don't see any reason to believe that rumor. Now, is it possible? Sure, it's possible. It's absolutely possible. But as of right now, from where we're sitting, I don't see any reason to give any credibility to that rumor. That's just where I'm at right now, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. I just doubt it. Justin Fayerison writes, Lion King, Toy Story 4, and Crawl at a local drive-in, like as in a triple showing? Well, first of all, that's an awesome triple showing because Lion King is great, Toy Story 4 is great, and Crawl is great. The interesting thing about it, though, is Crawl is an R-rated film, so it's an interesting thing to tack on as a third part of a triple header screening at a theater. Toy Story, Lion King, and then this R-rated film Crawl that you absolutely should not be showing to kids. That's an interesting little mix. Maybe they just figure by that point it's so late, people with kids are taking them home anyway. So maybe that's the theory behind that. But for an adult, that's a great triple lineup. I love that lineup. All right, J Meister 25 writes, Marvel needs to carry out character traits they recently established and have moments matter and affect them internally, i.e. Carol getting KO'd by Thanos. I think for the most part, when you look at Captain America and you look at Iron Man, I think for the most part, we do see MCU characters carry through with major character traits they establish from major events. I think we have seen that. I think we saw that with Ant-Man, again, Captain America and Iron Man. I think they have played through that stuff pretty well. What would be interesting is, like you said, maybe calling back to specific moments, because that is a really cool idea. Because Thanos just knocking Captain Marvel out one shot, that has never happened to her since she came into her power, right? I think it's safe to say that has never happened to Captain Marvel since getting her power. And at that point, it had been years and years and years, decades since she had gotten her power. So it would be interesting, J Meister, the next time we see Captain Marvel, to see her maybe struggling a little bit with the fact that, hey, I'm not the all-powerful being in the universe like I thought I was. I took on Thanos, and with one punch, I was knocked out of the fight. And maybe that's something maybe they could incorporate that into a character, an opportunity to give more depth to the character and stuff like that. And I already like the character. I already think the character's got multiple dimensions, but that would be a really neat thing to see. And I would be all for that. All right. Anatal Dees writes, John, Funny People was one of my first Blu-rays ever, and I think it's very funny. Aaron, did you watch Long Kiss Goodnight? Well, obviously, Aaron's not here right now. You are all funny peeps in my book. Well, thank you so much for that, Anatol. And you know what? That's the subjectivity film. I'll be honest with you. Adam Sandler's Funny People, to me, was not a good movie. I didn't enjoy it. I think it was a movie that really never had a clear idea about what it was trying to be, or what it was trying to say, or what it was trying to kind of how it wanted to function as a movie. It had its moments. I don't think it was a dumpster fire or anything, but to me, it just didn't work. But you're not alone. I know a number of people that actually really like Funny People. So yeah, by no stretch of the imagination are you alone in that. I just wish it worked for me, but that's a great example of the subjectivity film. I, as a film fan, watched it. Did not work for me. I know other people that it didn't work for either. But then you watched it and it worked for you on such a level that it's like one of the first Blu-rays you bought. And that is one of the greatest things about being a movie fan, is the subjectivity of the film and how we all have different experiences with it. And each film means something very unique to each one of us as individuals. And I think that's wonderful. So good on you for liking Funny People. And I'm glad it was one of your first Blu-rays. All right. David Goldstein writes, thoughts on Superman the movie? Marlon Brando's dialogue as Jor-El gives me goosebumps. I mean, that was a major coup getting a Marlon Brando in that, even though it was a very tiny role, whatever. I mean, look, Superman the movie, it was the movie that made us believe a man could fly. Remember that? That was the big ad campaign for it. You'll believe a man can fly. It was revolutionary visual effects work at the time. Laughable now, of course, but at the time it was way ahead of itself. It was way ahead of itself. It's classic. Now, what else can you say about it other than it's just pure classic? Luis Nunez writes, how was Thanos able to grab Stormbreaker? Well, really simple. Stormbreaker did not have Odin's enchantment on it. Like, remember, Odin put a very specific enchantment on Mjolnir. You know, whoever shall wield this hand, be they worthy. You know, there was that. You have to be worthy to lift Mjolnir. Stormbreaker isn't Mjolnir. Stormbreaker never had the Odin enchantment put on it. So that really wasn't an issue. Jeremy Sneed writes, I have DirecTV Now streaming app. I tried that out when I was really testing out which streaming app do I want to use to watch my cable television. I tried Sling TV, liked it very much. I tried DirecTV. That one I liked very much. I came to settle on YouTube TV. YouTube TV just seems to work for me. Great. I'm not saying it's way better than any of the other services or anything like that. I'm just saying it worked better for me. And that's what I settled on. But anyway, DirecTV streaming app is really good. Saw there branding it into AT&T now made me think as much as we talk about Disney's takeover. With the control of Warner Brothers Media, AT&T is a big player in this. They are. And you know, I talked about this a few weeks ago about how while we're all fascinated and enamored with Disney Plus, of which I'm one of them, we should not sell short how big this HBO Max could be. Like HBO, all due respect to Netflix, but HBO makes the best television out there. Netflix makes some incredible stuff, but HBO is the king of the hill when it comes to that. They don't have as much stuff as Netflix does, and maybe that's a good thing. But when you look at the Warner catalog and all their history and their production power, I'm telling you what, that HBO Max, Warner Brothers AT&T service is going to be a force to be reckoned with. It's going to be a serious force to be reckoned with. And I completely agree with you, Jeremy, that it's going to be a big player. We don't know. We don't have a full picture about what it's really going to be and look like yet. We're only starting to get glimpses, but I'm telling you what, it's already looking impressive. It's already looking really damn impressive. So that's a good observation. TaosM writes, hi from Montreal. I love Montreal. Thanks for entertaining me since 2013. Well, thanks for being along for the ride, Taosif, since then. Also, Spartacus being my all-time favorite show. Thanks for having the stunning Aaron Cummings on the show. And yeah, I get to say I knew Aaron before Spartacus, which was great. I mean, I was friends with Aaron before she got the Spartacus role. I still remember when she landed that role as Spartacus's wife, and we were all excited. And then I watched the first 2 episodes or so, and it was some of the worst television I'd ever seen. But I decided I'm going to keep watching it just because Aaron's in it. And then it turned into like one of my top 3 all-time favorite shows, which is great. So yeah, I always consider myself very privileged to be a friend of Aaron Cummings. It's really great. So thanks for sharing that, TaosM. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to hear about that. All right, Theist writes, hey, Mr. C, I'm 34, no home phone or cable since 2005. We were talking about that on the John Campea Show earlier today about how, you know, it looks like, you know, reports just came out that people who are cable cutters are going to basically equal the number of people who subscribe to cable television in the next couple of years. The cable television subscribers, cable television is dying, as Robert pointed out. It's going the way of physical media. And not this year, not next year, not in 2 years, but not too many years down the road, cable TV is going to be a thing of the past. And it got us talking about, Aaron started pointing out about how, like, it reminds us is when we stopped having a home phone. You know, I moved into, you know, after I moved out of my parents' place, I moved into my first place and I didn't get a home phone. It was right during that transition period. It's like, why, when I've got a phone in my pocket all the time, why would I have a home phone? Well, what if there's an earthquake and the digital services go out? Okay, yeah, but I've had my phone service go out too. So I don't know. I don't see a reason to pay, you know, X number of hundreds or thousands of dollars a year to have a phone service I'll probably never use. That being said, it was a mark of the change of the times. And like you, Theist, you've been on that train for a long time, man. You've already been on for a while. All right, Darth Sidious writes, hi, John. In yesterday's show, I pointed out that the CW might be doing a Batman Beyond live-action series. I didn't say that in my opinion they might already be casting for it. I didn't say that in my opinion they might already be casting for it with Kevin Conroy. Well, I mean, it is in your opinion, because there is no indication at this point that CW is doing a Batman Beyond show. There's been no indication of that whatsoever. Other than the fact that they're casting, you know, Kevin Conroy to play an older Bruce Wayne, which is exactly what, you know, an older Bruce Wayne is what you got in Batman Beyond. But other than that, there's been no indication that's what they're doing. Again, it's not an impossibility to say that they could do that, sure. But right now, there have been no reports, no official stories, nothing to indicate that that's what they are doing. So I'll just take that as in your opinion. For now, I'll just take that as in your opinion. All right, Darth Sidious writes, in Crisis on Infinite Earths, as he's playing Bruce Wayne. Yeah, again, but that's you speculating. You know, just again, Darth Sidious, you're speculating because nobody said he's playing Batman Beyond Bruce Wayne, or that they're having anything to do with Batman Beyond in that. It's just that they have an older Bruce Wayne. We also had an older Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight Returns, right? That was an older Bruce Wayne too. But we're not saying that means The Dark Knight Returns is a part of CW. No, all we know right now is that he's playing an older Bruce Wayne. That's all we got. So anything other than that is just speculation and opinion, which doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it is what it is. It's not fact. It's speculation and opinion, and there's been nothing official that has pointed towards any of that being a truth. Nothing come out says that it's not either, but that's why right now it's speculation and opinion. Anyway, Jacob Barker writes, first time super chat since finding you and watching you daily since Endgame. Oh, well, thanks for doing that, Jacob, and thanks for being here. It's always mentioned, but what is the beef between The Rock and Vin Diesel? It's never been clear. You know, Vin Diesel and The Rock made vague public statements, never directly mentioning the other. But it became clear that that's what the case was. And then we found out that The Rock and Vin Diesel never shot a scene together in Fast 8. And so on and so forth. But what the specific of the beef is, no idea. And honestly, it doesn't really concern me all that much what it is. The fact that they have beef is concerning because it's affecting the movies we're getting. What specifically the beef is between them, I don't know and I don't care. But it's never really, there's been no official word on what it is really. There's been a lot of speculation and reports, but no official thing. And because these guys are keeping it to themselves, they're not fighting it out in public, and that's the right way to do it. Are you paying attention, Tyrese Gibson? Anyway. Ladislav Misanek writes, how did you miss Chuck Norris from that list of action stars? Well, I mean, who cares? That was just a random list of things. It doesn't matter whether they were one person was on, or there was just a random thing for to give an example. That's all it was for. Okay, Anthony Luculano writes, I thought I'd check out some of Robert Parkinson's movies. You probably meant Robert Pattinson. Robert Pattinson's movies, and bought Water for Elephants, The Rover, love The Rover, Lost City of Z, and Damsel. I've got to admit, I'm not familiar with Damsel. That's one on the list that I am actually not familiar with. Intriguing. Anyway, yeah, well, first of all, good on you, Anthony, for checking it out, because whenever I hear people say, well, it was a terrible choice to get Robert Pattinson as Batman, 99% of the time, those people have never seen a Robert Pattinson movie other than Twilight. 99% of the time, those people have never seen a thing. They've never seen Water for Elephants. They've never seen The Rover. They've never seen Lost City of Z. They never saw Good Life. They never saw, they never saw any of those films, to which he's gotten rave reviews for. But good on you for taking it on yourself to check it out. I'm impressed, man. All right, Scotty Jones 48 writes, Rob's on point with the action hero thing. Oh, I completely disagree. I think, we were laughing about it afterwards. I think he was way out in left field. He was making arguments, and this is why I said he was making arguments about things that weren't even the topic. Why aren't actors anymore? Why don't we have pure action film actors anymore, like back in the day? And I think my reason was actually perfectly valid, because back then they didn't really care if action heroes were good actors. So you had a bunch of actors where the only things they were doing and what they were known for was their action films, because they didn't have the action chops, or they didn't have the acting chops to do other sorts of films. Today it's different. So we still have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, maybe the greatest action star of all time. I'm not saying he is, but I think he's in the conversation. Schwarzenegger says he thinks Dwayne Johnson's the greatest action hero of all time. We got Jason Statham, one of the greatest of our generation, one of the last remaining of our generation. But I just think now is a day that, we as an audience expect more from our movie stars than just being able to do action. We also want them to be good actors. And, back in the day, that wasn't necessarily high on the priority list. Jackie Chan, as iconic and immortal as he is, he was never the strongest thespian. Jean-Claude Van Damme, never the strongest thespian. Arnold Schwarzenegger, never the strongest thespian. And they were in a day where that was okay. Steven Seagal, never a strong thespian. They were from a day where that was fine. They're just action film guys, so they're pure action film guys. And, I just think today's different. This whole thing about they don't make action films like they used to. I think the facts point that that's just not true. The facts just point that that's not true. And I know Rob was saying, well, you can't count comic book movies. Yes, you can. That's a false exclusion. You're kind of making up, arbitrary rules here to try to force this scenario to fit into your thing. That's how I felt at any rate that he was doing. But some people agree with what he was saying, and that's fine. I just thought the facts totally pointed against it, but that is why I love having Rob on my show, because we often agree on things because great minds and everything, but I love that's why I like having Rob on my show. But why I love having Rob on my show is that we will have completely opposite points of view on different things. And that's why I love having Aaron in here too, because Aaron is anything if not opinionated. And I really like having that in here. So it's great when we agree on certain topics, and that happens more times than not. But I think it's even better when we have a big disagreement on it. But yeah, I firmly think Rob was wrong on that one. I think Rob was wrong. Some of you might think he was right, and that's why I love having Rob on the show, and that's why I love having my conversation with him. If you think that was good, you should see some of the discussions we have when we're driving in a car. I mean, it's great. Anyway, Kyle Pajor writes, John, sorry, John, but episode 5 of The Boys was absolute cringeworthy, complete mockery of Christianity, making Christians look like judgmental, idiotic sheep. This is part of the Hollywood agenda. I got to say this to you, Kyle. Episode 5 of The Boys hits very close to home. Now, you forget, I was a seminary student. I worked in churches. I was very much in the evangelical Christian circles for a lot of years. I've worked with some of the best. I worked in youth ministry, and I was, I often preached and things like that. I was in those circles, and I'm sorry to tell you, but as somebody who was in those circles, that was a very accurate representation about what some of those things are. Now, notice, what I would have taken issue with is if they ever said, this is what all Christian faith is. If they had said that in The Boys, I would have taken issue with that, because I know big segments of the Christian faith and people in the Christian faith that are nothing like that whatsoever, right? One of my best friends, I'm proud and happy to call one of my best friends a guy who's the minister of probably the largest, most influential church in all of Canada. And he's just one of the coolest, most wonderful, authentic, real dudes I've ever known in my life. And I'm proud to this day to call him a friend of mine. But they are very, very different. You know, that brand of Christianity is also very, very different than a brand of Christianity that is very predominant in American society that I'm sorry if you disagree, but I got to tell you, as somebody who was in those circles for a long time, what they showed in that was a bit exaggerated, yes, but so was a lot of The Boys is very much exaggerated. And that point was a little bit exaggerated too, but I almost felt uncomfortable watching that because it felt so much like a lot of the Christian festivals and conferences and all that kind of stuff that I myself had been to, you know? So while you may say that's, you know, making a mockery of it, look, I think there's a disingenuous large portion of Christianity today, and I'm only speaking for myself here, that is an affront to what real Christian faith is. And unfortunately, I think that part that they represented in The Boys, while a very much a representation of what I think is disingenuous Christianity, that is the antithesis of true Christian faith, it is nonetheless a very real reflection of a big chunk of those circles. And again, I would have taken issue, Kyle, had they said, this is what all of Christian faith looks like. I would have taken issue with that. But they were very much zoned in on one segment of it, and that segment looked uncomfortably familiar to me. It looked very uncomfortably familiar to me. And, you know, while I think there are, I don't talk about my religious faith very much, but we were talking about The Boys, so I'll just mention this. And, you know, you don't have to listen to what I say. I'm just giving you my own perspective, my own experience. That's all I'm telling you. But while I think there is a chunk of the Christian faith that is fighting to get the church back to what it is supposed to be, it is fighting against, nonetheless, a false heretical image of what church is to a lot of evangelicals, you know, today. And anyway, that's just my kind of read on it. So you may have had that experience with that episode, Kyle, but I saw it and it felt uncomfortably familiar. It felt all too familiar to the stuff that I have seen and that I was amongst. And one of the reasons why, you know, today when people ask me, you know, what are my religious beliefs, I say two things. I'm a theist. I don't call myself a Christian. I don't call myself anything like that. I just call myself a theist at this point because I just seen too much screwed up stuff. And I'm agnostically so. Like, I'm not quite sure what it is I personally believe at this point. But again, just going back to The Boys, I saw what you saw, but what I saw, like I said, was disturbingly familiar. So you may say they were completely misrepresenting things, but from my experience, I was seeing something that I feel like I saw far too many times. But anyway, that's just me. Good stuff for discussion, though, Kyle. I'm glad you brought it up, my friend. All right. DMV fan 123 writes, if you could have one superpower, what would it be? You know, I go back and forth on it's two very, very the most basic ones. One is super strength, obviously, but I think the one despite the fact that I actually have a fear of heights, I think flight. I think I would get over my fear of heights if I could fly. So I'm going to go with flight on that one. All right. DJCD01 writes, hey, John, Aaron, and Rob. Love you guys and everything you do. Rob, I got to see Jonathan Frakes at a con, and I love the fact that I remembered him on a small role such as Duke's. Keep bringing the filthy, y'all. You know what? I had a chance to meet Jonathan Frakes. I met him at the Toronto Fan Expo a number of years ago, years and years and years ago. it was the same expo where I got to interview William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. And Jonathan Frakes was there, and I had the opportunity of meeting Jonathan Frakes. Couldn't have been nicer. Everything you would hope that, number one would be, he was. He couldn't have been nicer. He couldn't have been more pleasant. He couldn't have been more generous with his time. He was just super nice. And I'm really kind of envious you got to meet him again. So that's pretty awesome, man. That's great. All right. Krieger119 writes, saw The Kitchen. Not bad at all. Give it a shot. Well, I am going to go see The Kitchen on Thursday night. It's going to be really busy. I'm going to go see The Kitchen, and then I have to I'm going to see The Kitchen in Hollywood, and then I got to haul ass and go directly to the airport. And I'm pushing it. I am really pushing it, getting there in time, but I'm going to go see The Kitchen, haul ass to the airport because I'm flying out to Toronto that night. I'm going to be in Toronto for a few days. So just so you guys know, there will be no John Campea Show on Friday. All right. Just so you know, there is no The John Campea Show on Friday because I'm going to be in Canada visiting family and friends. All right. Next up, Ladislav Misanik writes, well, Marvel are kind of soft rebooting, in my opinion. They won't be attempting another Infinity War / Endgame in the next few years. They might not even start building towards the new Thanos in Phase 4. No, I've been saying that before myself, and I don't think you can even call it a soft reboot. Nothing is being reset or rebooted. It's just that in real life, their world changes and whatever. So it's not really a soft reboot. But, I've had a lot of people asking, Ladislav, okay, so who's the next big bad for the next phase? Who's the next one? Which one are they going to be building up to next? And one of the things I said last week was, there may not be one big overarching bad for the next, 5-10 films. They might just decide to do kind of what DC is doing right now, which is just really focus on the individual characters in the individual movies. Do some crossover and stuff like that, but not have one big overarching story per se. Maybe little arc stories like we're going to get from WandaVision going into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, like little things like that, but it's very well that they couldn't. So while everybody was clamoring going, who's the next big bad? Is it going to be Kang? Is it going to be Galactus? Is it going to be whatever? I actually think there's a possibility that the answer is nobody. That they're just going to focus on making some really high quality individual films that are loosely tied together, have a little bit of crossover here and there, some mini story arcs that run throughout, but not necessarily one big overall thing like an Infinity Saga like we just had. I think they're going to change it up a little bit. Now, they very well may have one big giant bad guy that they build up to, and that's cool. But I also think there's a very strong possibility that they're not going to do that. Tim Wills writes, do you think that they could use the 5-year jump to explain mutants being in the MCU? Not really. Because if that were the case, you would have thought it would have been brought up or mentioned in Endgame. You would have thought it would have been mentioned or brought up in Spider-Man. So, no. I mean, it's possible. I'm not saying it's an impossibility. I'm not saying they absolutely won't. No. But if you ask me if I think they would do that, I don't think they will. But it's possible. It's absolutely possible. Santez Henderson writes, met someone at a comic shop saying he had a problem with female hero agendas, asked him why he was against it, and he didn't have an actual reason. I find that to be the case most of the time. I will say to somebody will have like a big hard-on against having women lead superhero films. And I'll say to them, okay, why don't you want a female-led superhero movie? Why don't you want a female-led superhero movie? And none of them want to say because women don't have their place being superheroes. None of them want to say that. So what they'll often say is something like, I don't think movies should be dictated by an agenda. Well, okay, time out for a second. They did 20 plus movies in a row in the MCU with white male leads. So why wasn't that an agenda? And why didn't you stand up at that point and say, hey, 5 in a row is fine. 6 in a row is getting suspicious. 7 and 8 in a row is beyond suspicious. Once you get to 20 films in a row, okay, it's blatantly obvious. you guys have an organized agenda here to only do superhero movies with white male leads. Why weren't you saying anything about that? Why is it a problem for you for them to now say, hey, you know, it's time that we give half of our audience representation of the thing when we've kept them excluded? So how come that's not an issue? Like, why, even if it is an agenda even if there was an agenda, really the agenda is to stop the exclusion agenda. There's been an exclusion agenda in Hollywood for decades and decades and decades and decades. That's the agenda. What we see now is the ending of agendas. We're seeing them end the exclusion agendas. That's what we're seeing happening today. But I would say, you know, why do you have a problem with that? Like, if you say all you want to see is a good superhero movie, okay, then why aren't you willing to give this one a shot? Regardless of how it came about, why aren't you willing to give this one a shot and just see if it's a good superhero movie? Again, people don't want to come out and admit they're sexist. And certainly not everybody, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people who watch, say, Captain Marvel or Wonder Woman and just didn't like those movies because it didn't work for them. And there's nothing wrong. That's the majority. The majority of the people who didn't like those movies was just because it didn't work for them. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. The vast majority are that. But there is a segment, and the proof is everywhere. There is a segment that simply think women need to keep their place. And they get stumped when you actually start presenting them with some rational logic. They get stumped. They don't know how to respond. So anyway, it is what it is, Santes. But you know what? Things change and people change. People change. So let's see how it all kind of works out. All right. Chris Bradford writes, if a movie is made for $100 million, generally speaking, how much does it need to break even? Generally speaking, okay, if you want to go for an average, some will be much higher, some will be a touch lower, but say throw out a $50 million marketing budget, okay, just for argument's sake. You know, Endgame had a $200 million marketing budget. A lot of movies have a $100 million marketing budget, but let's say for argument's sake, it's a movie that they make for $100 million. Let's say they put in, let's go 60. Let's say they spend $60 million on a marketing campaign, okay? Okay, 60 mil for a marketing campaign. So roughly 1/3 that of Endgame's campaign. Well, now you need to make, and again, this isn't an exact science. This is just a general guideline, okay? It's not an exact science. So your total now, we're saying for this movie is $160 million. $100 million to produce, $60 million marketing budget that you tack on top of that. Okay. You now need to make an amount of money that, generally speaking, says this. You get an amount that when you minus 1/3 from it, you end up with equal to or more than what your combined expense was. So it needs to make an amount of money in the theaters that when you subtract 1/3 of it, you're still left with, in this case, at least $160 million. So I'm terrible at math. So you know what? I'm just going to bring up a calculator here. So let's say this. Let's say we've got a movie that cost $160 million to make. Okay, so if a movie made $280 million, for argument's sake, and we minus 1/3, we're left with about $187 million. So we're in the ballpark. So roughly speaking, generally speaking, depending on a lot of different factors and how much is spent on marketing, blah, 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 that movie's going to need to make between $270 and $275 million to break even. Now, if that movie spent a more reasonable $100 million on its marketing, and it's therefore now it needs to make $200 million, well, then that becomes easy. You got to make $300 million at the box office. All right. So if you have a $100 million movie that they then spend $100 million on marketing for, again, only half of what they spent on Endgame's marketing, then now you need to make an amount of money in the box office where if you minus 1/3, you end up with at least $200 million. In this case, it would be you need to make $300 million at the box office. So because if you minus 1/3 from 300 million, you're left with 200 million there. The movie broke even. So there's a lot of variables. Again, none of this is an exact science. It's just a general rule of thumb. Okay. Shelley Belly writes, I'm always thinking 2 steps ahead, like a carpenter making stairs. Andy Bernard in The Office. You know, I got to admit, I was never a big Andy Bernard fan in The Office, but, you know, at least 1 or 2 nights a week, Ann and I will play either Parks and Rec roulette or The Office roulette. And what that is, we'll bring up Parks and Rec or The Office on Netflix or Hulu, and then just kind of close our eyes and just whip through the different episodes and then hit play. Because we know whatever episode we land on is going to be a good episode. I've never been a big fan of the Andy Bernard character played by Ed Helms. But I got to say, in the last couple months, we've watched some episodes where Andy Bernard has some really good choice moments and has some really good episodes. And I'm still not a big fan. He's still not in my top 7 favorite characters of The Office, but I think I have a little bit more of an appreciation for it today than I did. That was certainly a good line. All right. Justin Lopez writes, now that Andy Serkis is directing Venom 2, it's highly unlike now he'll be in Matt Reeves' Batman, as rumored. I thought he'd be a great Penguin. Well, again, we don't know if he would have been a great Penguin because what the Penguin you have in your head could be completely different from the Penguin that, you know, Matt Reeves may have in his head. So who knows what he would have been good as. But it would have been totally possible for Andy Serkis to be in Venom 2 and be in the new Batman. What becomes much more problematic is being the director of Venom 2 and being in Batman. Because when you're in a movie, you know, maybe 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 12 weeks commitment, and you can do things in between. But when you're directing a movie, you're talking 2 years of total dominance over your life, where every moment you're living, breathing, everything, that one project. So yeah, I think you're right, Justin. It makes it very problematic for that rumor about Andy Serkis maybe being in Batman. That goes out the window. Now, who knows? Maybe if he would have been, if he wasn't going to be directing Venom 2, but I think with him directing Venom 2, it makes his involvement, unless it's like a one quick cameo thing, where he only has to go and be on set for maybe a day or two. That's possible still, but I think you're right. For the most part, I think it does kind of exclude him, unfortunately. But I am very much looking forward to seeing him direct Venom 2. All right, Father of a Legend writes, hi, John. Do you think Brandon Routh Superman will be a jobber? We know nothing about Crisis at this point. We know nothing about it, except for all the basic stuff we got from last season. We really don't know anything about what the role he's going to play, how he comes into it, if he's going to have any interaction with anybody other than Arrow. We simply don't know. So at this point, it's absolutely impossible to say what they're going to do with it when I don't even know what the story is going to be at this point. All right. Lone Wolf X6 writes, I hate when I see titles that say only true fans notice on film. I hate when I see titles that say only true fans notice on film. No, it's not true fans. It's things you noticed or titles the real reason this happened. I gotta admit, Lone Wolf, I'm not exactly following you here. I hate when I see titles that say only true fans notice in film. Sorry, dude, I'm not quite following what it is you're saying. I'm sorry about that, Lone Wolf. Ton Toothman writes, hey, brother, just want to say love you lots. Thank you so much, Keaton. It's always great when somebody just wants to write in to say something nice. I appreciate that, man. It's good having you here. All right. Ben Rayner writes, I pick theaters equals I declare bankruptcy. Yeah, so this kind of came up earlier. I pick theaters, which is a smaller theater chain, but it's across the country. We've got one in Pasadena, and it's great. I love it. It is actually one of mine and Ann's favorite movie-going experiences to go to an iPic theater. It's wonderful. It's luxury. It's fantastic. But word came out the other day that they're filing for bankruptcy, and they're going to try to sell the company. So it's not. Thankfully, it's not word that they're not closing down yet. They're not closing down, but they are filing for Chapter 9 bankruptcy protection. And hopefully they get their finances worked out. They're able to make a sale, keep things going, I hope. But then he's throwing in a little Office reference with, I declare bankruptcy. Michael Scott from The Office. It was a great moment. Nice way to combine those two things in there, Ben. All right, final question, and then we are all caught up. Lone Wolf X6 writes, how would you compare Arrowverse death to MCU deaths? Yeah, I mean, it's completely different. It's completely different. Like the CW's DC universe is all done with a wink and a smile and a bit of cheese, and it's I wouldn't take any of it even remotely seriously. Like, don't be wrong, I am very entertained by the Flash show. I am very entertained by Black Lightning. And, you know, I've had a love-hate relationship with Arrow, but some seasons are great, some seasons not so much, but whatever. But, you know, I like the CW DC universe. I do. It's fun. It's silly, ridiculous fun. But they operate more in the realm of, we never take ourselves seriously here as compared to the MCU. So I really wouldn't even try to compare anything about the MCU and the CWDC. I just think they're approached so differently and do things such radically different ways that it's, you know, one we take more seriously and one we don't. And so I really don't compare the two of them at all. All right, guys. That will do it for this installment of the companion video. We are now all caught up on all the stuff that we were behind on yesterday. Don't forget, guys, the John Campea Show returns again tomorrow with me, Chris Carr, and Robert Meyer Burnett. Make sure you guys join us for that. Special thank you to all you guys who did send in those questions, the ones we answered on the live show and the ones we've answered here, not just because you gave us great fun things to talk about, but also because you supported the channel along the way as you were doing that. And I, fact checker Jonathan, Ray, Rob, Aaron, Chris, we all thank you very much for supporting the content that you enjoy watching. All right, guys, that will do it for me. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.